this very telling book, there's a code that's woven through the book that certain pictures have a meaning behind them. Certain passages, when you examine them, reveal how the state's secret privilege was used to silence Mr. Shipp and his attorney and his family and everyone around him. Folks, the state's secret privilege, the NSA is using just this tactic and technique to silence us all. Now, to his credit, Mr. Shipp has embedded a numeric code in certain parts of the text. The numerical key sequence of the code is stamped inside the book jacket of copies that he is selling at speeches and in signed copies that are being sent to people through his website. And again, his website is kevinmshipp.com. Now, I'm not sure. I hear a drone overhead. I'm just kidding. Now, I got to say this. The copies on Amazon.com have the code in them, but the numerical sequence will not be on the inside cover. So you've got to go through Mr. Shipp's website. I got to tell you, I am just intrigued, fascinated, and, I'm just astounded. Not really astounded, but I'm grateful for the bravery and for the allegiance to the Constitution and for the fight. Folks, if you heard the first hour of Mr. Shipp's interview, can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you, can you imagine being in that position? How alone would you feel? And I mean how alone. How would you respond to that? Boy, I'll tell you, you would have to call upon every muscle, every bit of faith you have and God above to really get you through that. And I'm just so grateful that Mr. Shipp has broken this news on our broadcast, the Hagman Hagman Report, which, by the way, is being heard in numerous countries. Mr. Shipp, I've got 7 people here that want to say hello to you. 1 from the Philippines, 1 from the UK, 2 from Brazil, 2 from Central America, and 1 from Alaska. Now, of course, that's not a country, but you get my drift. So, saying various attaboys and thank you for appearing. I just want to share that with you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much from all of them.
Well, I'll tell you, we're just getting a tremendous outpouring, a tremendous response about your appearance and about your bravery and your sacrifice that you made. Let me turn it back over to you, because there are so many issues here. You had mentioned about the NSA using the 1,271, or the fact that there are 1,271 secret sites inside the United States. Tell us more about that. What's going on here.
Yeah, and these have been established since 9/11, and people also need to know that there are 4.8 million Americans that have secret and above government clearances, and what that means is very important. That means each one of those people within the United States, almost 5 million, have signed government secrecy agreements which prevent them from saying anything about the operations that they're involved in or they face going to jail. So that is the number of people that are bound inside the United States. The state secrets privilege, the government has claimed they've only used it a handful of times. Myself and others have uncovered the fact that since 2001, they used it over 400 times to shut down illegal activity, lawsuits like the NSA spying program they didn't want people to know about. This is all going on not in a foreign country. This is going on inside the United States against our own citizens, against the American people, and it has all started since 9/11. We are now in a surveillance state. We have lost our privacy, lost our liberty. The First, the Second, and the Fourth Amendments are no longer being abided by our government, and they violate those on a routine basis.
Now, Kevin, I have a question. You say jail. We know the Insider Threat Program Obama has put out. What kind of time length are we looking at? And I know this depends on the information that's put out or what the publicity of it gets, but we'll just say some low-level intel that may or may not be classified or sensitive that they just don't want out. What could somebody be facing for releasing that kind of information?
Anywhere from probably, it depends on the judge a lot of it, anywhere from 5 to 20 years in prison.
That's, wow, okay.
We saw Bradley Manning get 35 years today.
Yeah, that was a pretty big case in terms of of information. But many of them will get 20-year services. John Kirikow was just convicted. You probably know about him, CI officer who was disputing the interrogation program. He was just convicted for 2 years, and he didn't even reveal anything. He mentioned the name of one person in one of his discussions. They claimed was covert, and he's now in jail in Pennsylvania. He's a former CI officer and a very very good man, but they only gave him 2 years because it was an inadvertent disclosure. It's the difference between intentionally doing it and doing it by mistake. If someone intentionally does it, like Bradley Manning, or someone that even releases one document, they're looking at 5 to 10. If it's a lot of documents like Manning, it could be 35. It could even go as high as 50 years in jail. For example, Aldrich Ames, former CI officer, he's in jail for life. Robert Hansen, former FBI special agent in charge, gave information, sold information to the Soviets. He's in jail for life. So it depends on what they did. Excuse me. It depends on the information they turned over, and then it depends on the final decision of the judge. So they vary quite a bit.
Wow. Okay.
And it's crazy. We see Manning going to jail for 35 years. They go after Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, but we have the president handing out classified information from Osama bin Laden to Hollywood to whatever he feels.
Oh yeah. Hey, you guys. In the killing of bin Laden, which was top secret information, we got a blow-by-blow account, a blow-by-blow leak of information from the Obama administration on that operation. Also some things in Yemen. No accountability whatsoever. When it comes to Benghazi, they won't even answer the most simple questions, even the name of one witness. So they'll leak like a sieve when it's in their favor, and that is not an understatement. But when it comes to something they don't want people to know, all of a sudden they invoke secrecy. That's why I titled Chapter 25, The Tyranny of Secrecy, because it will turn, and it has turned, the executive branch into the equivalent of a monarchy. They can classify things when they feel like it, at their whim. They can use it for cover-up. They can use it to cover things that they're doing from the United States Congress and a constitutional government. And secrecy is the weapon. It is the power. It is what they use, and not even Congress can stop it because they don't have, quote-unquote, the clearances. But that's what they're using.
Wow. Okay. Now, I've never seen anything like this before, folks. I've got to tell you, as I'm sitting here, I'm just being deluged with questions via email for our guest. If I can, there's no way I can ask all of the questions I'm getting, and I've never seen anything like this. So the interest level is extremely high. But before I get into the listeners' questions, let me ask, if I might, I'm doing an article about John Brennan, the current the CIA director, former CIA director, and of course in between some very interesting things, and of course his connection to the film Innocence of Muslims, which supposedly or was touted by Susan Rice as being the impetus for the attacks in Benghazi and the Cairo. What can you tell me publicly about John O. Brennan, the head of the CIA?
I can tell you this. I understand he is ruling with a brute force inside the CIA, especially on the witnesses to Benghazi. I understand he's brutal on the officers in there. And I can tell you a couple of things. An FBI agent has come out very publicly and said that John Brennan converted to Islam 20 years ago when he was chief of station in Saudi Arabia, was converted by the Saudis. Now, that's one person who was there saying that. Brennan himself has come out and said that he has visited Mecca and Medina. Now, anybody that knows anything about Islam knows you cannot visit Mecca or Medina without being a documented practicing Muslim. The only way Brennan could have gotten in there if he was indeed a converted Muslim. That's a real concern, and that would tie into providing weapons and arms to Islamic groups. And it would tie right into the rest of the advisors in the White House that have connections to the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, 10 years ago, you guys, we couldn't have dreamed that this sort of thing would be occurring, but it is. So, and of course, Brennan is now the director of the CIA, and he's the fella basically I'm standing up against right now in this interview. But I think that we have a very, very serious problem on our hands.
Do you feel, and this is my question, and also the same question from Robert from Winter Park, Florida. Thank you for the question. although you might not know the answer to this, it might call for speculation. Do you feel that Mr. Hastings perhaps was investigating Mr. Brennan and might have been the subject of an official hit?
Thanks for that question. It's very suspicious. I understand the speed that he was going was not high enough for that kind of damage. I can tell you this: if you're gonna, even the mafia knows this. The best way to make a hit and conceal the evidence is in a fire, automobile fire, plane crash, what have you. If you're going to take somebody out, that's the way you do it. And that's pure speculation on my part. I understand he was working on an article possibly about John Brennan himself, and all I can do is speculate on that.
Okay. All right. And this from Patrick from Spokane. Please ask Mr. Shipp, who is Barack Hussein Obama? Do we know? Was there any talk at the time during your tenure as to his pedigree, or his background, his allegiance?
Thank you for that question. That is of grave concern. Other presidents, you'll know where they went to college. Their roommates will be interviewed. They'll have little quips about what they were like when they were in college. They'll talk about their studies together. They'll talk about what they did in their spare time. There is nothing like that about Barack Obama. It is nothing but mystery, his entire background. And it's interesting, I have my own opinions about this. You remember the Manchurian Candidate, something that everybody thought would never happen, where they put a figure in the White House for nefarious purposes. If you look at the absence of his background, and I'm not talking about the birth certificate, that's a whole other issue. You look at everything else in his past that you cannot find anywhere, it is suspicious and it is suspect. That has never happened to any president of this country ever before. It's very mysterious, it's very chilling, and it calls into question who this man really is.
Indeed. We looked into his background. Of course, almost 30 years as a private investigator in the private sector. Mm-hmm. You develop contacts within agencies, within various federal agencies. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, I've never, with respect to Obama, I've never seen anything like he couldn't, as far as I'm concerned, I couldn't authenticate anything about his background. Yeah. It's really hard to fathom. Now, Marianne from I think this is Winter Park, Florida, I believe it is, asking about 9/11. Obviously, 9/11 had, and I noticed that you have in your book a chapter about 9/11. Do you feel that there was just incompetence, or was there perhaps a level of, dare I say it, conspiracy by definition with respect to the events of 9/11?
Well, thanks to Marianne for that question. There were some inconsistencies about 9/11, and we all know all the conspiracy theories that are out there. When the 9/11 report came out, and I'll just say this without reaching any conclusions, there were some serious holes in the 9/11 report. Simple things, you as an investigator probably would have picked up on these immediately. Simple things that they did not investigate that a high school student could have gone and gotten the information on, they didn't even bother to look at. Probably one of the most ridiculous and glaring things for me was they claimed that they verified that one of the Saudi terrorists was on the plane. They were able to prove he was one of the hijackers because they found his passport in the rubble of the World Trade Center. Now just think about that for a second. The entire aircraft was incinerated. The 2 or 3 floors above and below, the metal was bent. And we're talking about a paper passport that just mysteriously winds up in the rubble of the World Trade Center, and they find it and say, aha, here's proof that he was on the plane. The most ridiculous part is people believed that, or at least it went right over their head, and they didn't realize that is not just impossible, it's ridiculous, but it's that kind of thing that makes you wonder what the heck is going on. It was a lousy investigation, and there were ridiculous things like that were in there that are just beyond a legitimate, even semi-properly done investigation.